welcome back to another episode of Super Coach Mates. These collab podcasts or with different creators are coming thick and fast at the moment. We're trying to pump them out as best as we can. As we said, we're doing both Super Coach content creators and some fan podcast creators, which has been good to see. But we are welcomed by Big J from the Centre Bounce. Obviously, hopefully you would have seen his content. He's done a really good job with Joe as well. They've been pumping it out and they've reached, really good heights in recent times. But how are you, Big J, and how's your season gone to date so far?
Oh, thanks for having me on, Tom. Doing all right. Very, very happy. This season, I think Supercoach is one of those things that can be very punishing, but can be very rewarding. And as long as you kind of have your fundamentals down and things like that, you'll generally do okay. The people that don't make mistakes but have the knowledge seem to be in the top 100. I have the knowledge but have made the mistakes and currently sitting about 2,000. So, doing all right. I'm happy with the team.
Yeah, nice. So obviously, you're in a pretty strong position, I guess, in the overall grand scheme of things. Obviously, sometimes, especially content creators out there who pump out videos every day and things like that are kind of in a smaller bubble where, you look at your rank compared to other content creators, especially because you're in a public eye a little bit. But obviously, anything in that top 5K is really impressive if you think about in the grand scheme of things with how many people play or how many people drop off as well. But what's kind of your one main positive of the season that you can take away, or something you've learned, especially in this season, given it's been 40 trades? Some people have used them like cotton candy, but what's kind of your main takeaway this season that you've thought to yourself, it's gone right, and you can kind of move forward to next season with confidence that this kind of thing you've done has put you in good stead for moving forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because every year it seemed like Supercoach has changed. Like a couple of years ago, we had the COVID issues and the game was shorter, which meant that scaling happened. Like last year, there was more trades, and this year we had even more trades. And then we had all the nonsense with round 0 and players coming out. They had an early buy and whatnot. So the game itself's always evolving. I would always say, I think a big takeaway for myself this year was just being adaptable and being able to read the room and kind of what you need to do on a week-by-week basis to, you don't know what the AFL is going to come up with next year. They might have 3 round 0s, and then, you just have to kind of figure yourself out there. But, just kind of that adaptability. I think for myself, big takeaway for next year is probably go something like a Guns and Rookies. Don't force myself to start a team or put myself in a situation where you have to spend more trades than you have to, really. I think I started with 12 or 13 primos, and then after 2 weeks ended up going down to 11. And it's like, well, I'm already on the back foot. Like, I'm spending more trades to finish my team than I wanted to. So, if I can go back in time and change that, probably a big thing for me.
Yeah, you're kind of on the money there with regards to people saying every season, we can do this and this and this, and mid prices look real nice and your team looks real nice. But fundamentally speaking, when it comes down to the crux of things, especially this year where we had a fair few mid prices available, it came down to Guns and Rookies being a winning selection, as it has always been realistically. But what's kind of, obviously you're in a good position now where, like, I'm in a similar position. I'm just inside the top 2K as well, where at the moment it's make or break with regards to overall rank when you're trying to push that 1K. But if you're looking back at the season now with 7 rounds to go, what's kind of the biggest mistake is probably a loaded question, but regret or mistake that you would have thought back now where you thought, oh shit, if I'd done that, it could have boosted me even further?
I have 2 things, right? And the first one I'll say is not so bad. And that was messing around with James Jordan earlier on in the season. Like a player that I didn't start and then brought into my team and then ended up trading out of my team for not much gain, I think was one of the big things. Like a lot of that kind of just fluffing around with trades early. 40 trades, you'll never run out. I think I was out of boosts by around 6 or 7, which kind of shows how many trades I spent in that small period of time as well. James Jordan ended up costing me 2 boosts and 2 trades for, I think, about 60 or 70K, which probably wasn't a great thing. The second one's a bit, not so great, and that's starting Sam Berry over McKercher, which I did, which I'm not proud of. And then, 4 weeks into it, I'm like, holy nollies, I've got to get McKercher in my team. And,
yeah,
it happens. So,
yeah. I mean, hindsight's a
silly
great
decisions like that, kind of,
yeah,
your starting team makes so much impact on how your season
exactly
goes.
right. Yeah. 100%. I mean, obviously now we're in a position where, as I said beforehand, you are the firmly in the top 1K, or you're pushing for that rank, or you're
Mm.
giving up Supercoach, whatnot. But obviously, with buyers finish, a lot of teams finalize. Who are you looking towards trading? And if you've got trades left, and I know we spoke off air, you basically finished off with your trades, but who have you targeted now that you think might be maybe a bit risky, or you're playing it safe, but who have you targeted to kind of think, all right, this is the time to go, and you pick those players to push up the rankings from here on in?
Yeah, I think for me, whatever situation you're in, DPP matters so much more right now than what people think. And I've saved myself over, last couple of weeks countless times, just with having like that, be able to swap the players around. I know that, right now I've got Heaney on the bench in the midfield, and there's no way that normally would happen except for the fact that I've got DPP and be able to put another primo like on field. Just stuff like that, really. But we've spoken about it a lot on our show about just like after the post buy, it becomes more about analyzing who's got this many games left and what their matchup is versus how good of a player it is. So just as an example, like, who can I look in my team? Let's pretend Zach Merritt. You might not have Zach Merritt. Zach Merritt's a fantastic player, good price, whatever. But if Zach Merritt has 8 taggers out of the next 11 games, regardless of what his price is, he's not such of a good pick versus someone like a Dunkley, which I would have loved to have into my team. I just couldn't afford him at the time and made a silly decision, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Brisbane's runs home is fantastic, right? Yeah. So it's more about analysing where a team's position is on the ladder, what kind of the narrative is around that team, and making your trades and the players you bring in at this crucial time kind of applicable for that. I think it's a big thing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think you're right there. And, you probably don't realise it when you start off in a team, but, yeah, as you said, DPP is so important, especially this time of the season. Like, I know, for example, I brought in McKercher last week, and he obviously did really well, but now I'm in a position where I've got him stuck at M8 with the like, I took that risk needing the cash, and I thought potentially I can push him down to M9, D7. But the problem is I don't have a D7 swing at the moment to allow that to facilitate. But you look at, people that are on top of it and have loopholes everywhere in the position to DPP. Yeah, it's super important. And I think in a season like this where we didn't have much carnage to begin with, and all of a sudden it's hit like a train, having that flexibility is really important. But I mean, it is what it is, and I think you always want to learn and develop for next season. That's for sure. But moving on now,
you look at this week, right? And there's like, I think some people have got 6 premiums out this week. It's like, come on, man, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's one of those seasons where if you haven't prepared right up post buys, it's really stung you. And it's unfortunate with the amount of injuries piling up at the same time. But as I said, if you've prepared, you can have cover, or you have enough trades where you can just facilitate a swap to another premium, and that's what you want at the end of the day. You don't want to stuck with problems everywhere. But I reckon, as I spoke with a few other people, it's make or break this weekend. I think in particular is going to change up a lot of rankings, in particular, especially with people that are premiums out. But I guess moving on to the main part of the episode with regards to your mob, North Melbourne. Obviously, they've had not the best season, but they've had up and downs. They've started to really galvanise the group, I think, and moving in the right direction, that's for sure. But looking at the players that are based off ranking points or Supercoach points, if you want to put it that way, your top 4 is Sheasel, 117 average, LDU 109, Fisher's drops down to about 87, and McKercher's injury impacted 81. They're your top 4 from an AFL statistical point of view. But from your point of view, having watched games live and things like that, who have been your standout players? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the top 4, but who are your top kind of players that you notice that have impacted particularly in game and kind of can move forward? You're really looking positive for those guys.
I think the one player there that I've actually brought into my Supercoach team this week, because Yeah, he's a good player, and I'm happy I've got him in my team and happy he's doing so well. Is Cherry. I was very surprised you didn't have him on the list here. Guy's currently ranking. Yeah, he's currently ranking, I think, fourth for tackles in the entire AFL.
Yeah.
He's fourth for hitouts at the moment, and has basically gone from being a guy that could have gone to St Kilda for a second rounder to a guy that, in his first year of solo rucking in the AFL has dominated multiple opponents and actually been a really scary prospect to play against. I think if we didn't have Gawn and Grundy having the season that they're having, he's probably number 3 ruckman in the AFL at the moment. Just dominating. I don't know if you watch a bit of the North Melbourne highlights, but saw him with the chase down of Liam Ryan a few weeks ago, and just kind of the effort that he's put in. Really, really taken on board what Clarko and the opportunities that he's had, and the club sticking by him. It's just been dominant. Comben being another one as well, who has basically had injury concerns for such a long time, and I think he's 5th for intercepts at the moment in the AFL. So he's just kind of these players who, as referencing Supercoach a little bit, when a player has a new role at a new club or goes to a different position, that kind of thing, you see the improvement, similar to the North Melbourne players at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I think Sherry's been one that, looking back on it now, St Kilda's probably missed the boat with that one and really kind of regret not taking him or not being able to take him, probably is a better term for it. But yeah, he's shown, people even thinking about bringing him in as a replacement for Gordon. That's how good he's going. He's just almost a stronger Marshall, if I have to relate it to St Kilda. He does all the around the ground work, but he's not bullied off the ball in the ruck contest. And I think he provides a really good, stable kind of basis for your midfielders to do their work, and he hasn't shied away from the contest. He's really aggressive. I think the only kind of knock on him is potential injury concerns, but even then he's done pretty well to survive the season so far, and I think if you can push forward, you're not really regretting missing Goldie or anything like that. I think he's stepped in and really done a good job, and yeah, as I said, the ranking points don't lie when it comes to his dominance around the ground, that's for sure. But I guess looking at your season overall, from, you look at the last 3 years where you're really struggling to win games full stop. You were like, how many more compensation picks do we need to make it relevant to the AFL and all that? But obviously now you look at your last couple games, you really a shining light almost. It's almost changed. Something's flicked. You look at the Collingwood game, you held on. Oh, you barely almost held on, but you look at the kind of positions that you've been in as a club to be in winning positions now, and I guess the players haven't felt that for a while. Do you think what do you think is the main kind of switch that's happened from going into games thinking it's how much rather than do we have a chance to now it's like you're basically in most games, and granted you might fade away in the last quarter or whatnot, but what do you think has been the main shift to being in games and almost snatching games a lot of the time against top opposition?
I would put it down to 3 things, right? 2 revolve around Clarko and 1 doesn't. I'm a big advocate of players make or break how a team goes on field, and it's not necessarily the coach. Like a player on field will decide if they're going to tackle, if they're going to run down, if they're going to put in the effort that they really need to. And you can see that with guys, oh, look, we've bought in and we haven't bought in into the system. So first up on the list really is the big buy-in. Clarko basically sat down all the players during the mid-season break and said, hey, guys, this racism saga stuff's been dreadful for me. It's been really shit. I haven't been able to do the things that I wanted to do, and thanks for sticking by me from this, but you guys aren't happy with our performance, how we're going, and I'm obviously not happy with how we're going as well. So what can we do? And putting himself in that bit of vulnerable position and opening up, I think, has got such a buy-in with the players. Second thing is kind of just timing for Clarko as well. Imagine I think he coached 9 games last year. Obviously, racism stagger, he took some time off in the middle of the season. So nine games plus 10 games up until the mid-season bye. So, well, not 10. So let's say he's coached 24 games up until the mid-season bye. So developing a new game plan, getting everything to kind of work with that takes a long time, right? You can imagine. And then third thing, I think, which is pretty understated, apart from North Melbourne fans that have kind of seen it, is the player that we picked up in the mid-season draft and kind of fitting players into positions. I'm talking about Bryn Teakle, the guy that we picked up, I think, with 15 in the mid-season draft. Our forward line has been shambles for a while, but it's a bit of a case of, well, if Larky's getting triple teamed every week, there's no coverage for him in the position. So getting a guy that can do a second ruck, getting a guy that can take a contested mark has really freed up a lot of space and a lot of options in our forward line, and meant that maybe a Zerha doesn't have to be the second tall anymore. He can now be that roaming third. It frees up a few more of our smaller players so they don't get the second or third best defender. Now they're getting fourth, fifth, or sixth that's on field. So just kind of that small implementation of one player on field has had such a big impact. And, like you say, post midfield, so post mid-season draft versus pre-mid-season draft, everything's changed. So, yeah, it's kind of fitted and worked out quite well for us.
Yeah, I think as well, like you only need one game where you're in it and you feel that winning kind of momentum. And I think that's all you need for a young club to galvanize the group a little bit and push forward, and that winning mentality kind of stems through. But I guess moving forward from that conversation, look at St Kilda. I'm going to use St Kilda as an example because obviously I support them, but one most important part of the ground is that midfield, and that's what we've been criticised for being dominating clearances, and we look really strong defensively, but we can't win a ball to save our lives. Looking at North's midfield group, as a St Kilda supporter, you're almost a little bit jealous with the kind of talent that you're running through there, like LDU, Sheasel, Simpkins found some form, McKercher can go in there, you've got Wardlaw, he's a freak. Looking at that midfield group, do you think that the current crop of youngsters have what it takes to go from an almost club that's been really struggling to now solidify yourself in the 8, or do you think they need still time to develop and you're fully expecting kind of an ups and downs before you hit that top 8, or do you really believe in that core midfield group and that leadership group that can go stuff it next year? That's our aim is finals and whatnot because we've got the talent on the list now.
I think you kind of, as a North Melbourne fan, you see how dominant like a Sheasel in his second year of AFL is versus grown men, at 19. Watched a couple of weeks ago, last week, you would have seen as a Supercoach fan, the Kircher run down the wing, bounce the ball 4 times, set up a goal. You're going to see more and more of these type of things as the players develop. But I think just in general with the AFL, there's a huge difference. I mean, any sport, right? Even you think about driving lessons, there's a huge difference between an L-plater driving versus a full-fledged driver who's driven for 10 years, right? So it's just time. At this point, it's really just time. Like Sheasel's played 30 games of AFL. Cherry's just come in and now he's playing his 50th game of AFL. Tom Powell will be around the Sheasel mark. George Wardlaw came into the season and he's played like 6 games. McKercher played his 10th game on the weekend and he's already dominating against grown men. It's kind of just that development of time thing. I think the makeup of the midfield is getting good. And I think we're at the point where you could probably say, okay, let's just wait now and let them develop to the point where Will Phillips has been a crazy good tagger. I mean, he kept Matt Rowell to low possessions, Nick Dacos and a few other players. And this week with Wardlaw coming back, we don't even have a spot for it. So, that's just how much it is. If you look at our numbers, right, every person barring Cherry being the ruckman, it's a top 20 pick. LDU pick 4, Tom Powell pick 14, Phillips pick 3, Wardlaw pick 2, McKercher pick 2, Sheasel pick 3. So the talent's definitely there. The quality's there. It's just time at this point. And it's going to be a little bit like how Hawthorn has nabbed a few wins recently that they probably shouldn't have got. I think North Melbourne will start doing that a little bit more as well.
Oh, 100%. I think if you're willing to wait that long for a win, you can wait a little bit longer for ultimate success. And I think that the young core group is doing the right thing. And you look really dominant around the ground. I think there's, no real weak spot. But having said that, I mean, obviously, looking back and as a St Kilda supporter, the one thing I can always come back to is the fact that I speak about it when I watch games when St Kilda play. You look at their defensive half and their midfield half. It's like we're starting to get that part of our game right, but the one thing that really lacks and struggles is our forward half entries. And it's almost like you take away that front third of the forward 50, we look really dominant, but it's that forward 50 that is costing us big time and probably stopping us from moving into the top 8. But what, as a North supporter, where do you think you're out of, if you're divvying up your ground into mids, forwards, and defence, where do you think you're the strongest at, and where do you think there is some like holes in the side which is really stopping you from progressing with regards to positioning?
Well, I mean, like midfield probably has to be the strongest point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we were dominating against Essendon. We've beaten like almost every team we've played through the middle when we've had a full team. You'll watch George Wardlaw on the weekend and you'll see kind of why. The kid's a freak. He's not bad at. I always tell people he's not bad at AFL. He's pretty good. The weakest point is probably the forward line, and that might just be a case of, well, we're still trying to figure out what the issues are. The defense. Let me rephrase that. So midfield, 100% the strongest, and it's probably just a mix, like 50-50 between the forward line and the defense, where I think slowly we've started to develop the right pieces. It's just about making that consistency and coherency together, which is the big problem. So cool. Like Comben, like I said before, 5th in the AFL for intercepts, core, all these players are doing well, but they still make the silly mistakes because they haven't played with each other for a long time. Similar to the forward line, like Teagle coming in, players doing well. I mean, Nick Larkey kicked 70 goals last year, which is great, but hasn't worked in the same forward line cohesion before. So it's more like those two together, and then the midfield is like our strongest point.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think you're all very similar in the fact compared to St Kilda is that once you get that forward half entry sorted, you suddenly look dangerous, and you see it in small patches in both sides in particular, where when it works really well, but it's that consistency. And I guess at the end of the day, you know, if you want to win games, you have to kick goals. And if you can't get that forward half entry right, you can do everything right defensively speaking, but as soon as that ball gets turned over in the forward half, your defense just gets worn out. And that's when the floodgates open from the, you know, turnover and stuff like that. But moving forward to our player kind of focus and what you guys are looking and targeting for next season, one person's come up in trade talks, and I'm aware of it because St Kilda are desperate for him. But LDU in particular, I think my first part of this question is, I've heard interviews of him speaking quite highly of North Melbourne. It seems like he's wanting to stay at the club and so on and so forth. But do you think there is a world where he lives and where he leaves the club and goes to another club like St Kilda, like wherever? And what kind of support do you think, because obviously he's a type of player that's a match winner, you can build a whole side around him, but what kind of support does he need in the mids to kind of, for him to say, I want to stay at North? And I guess the second thing is there any kind of either a free agent coming up or a draft kind of position that you need to fill to further improve your side and really kind of target, you know, eventual finals?
You've asked me a lot of questions there, so I'll try and break it down to kind of one to one. Is there a world where I think he leaves? No. I think kind of the way that the club's been going the last few weeks, you think about, I always go back to how was Cripps playing at Carlton? When Cripps was playing at Carlton and they had no one else in that midfield, it was Cripps versus the world, right? And Cripps was doing that at a time where he was probably early to mid-20s and just dominating. As they started to slowly bring in more players who could do their thing, Sam Walsh, whatnot, he got better, and kind of the want and the feelings, and it's like, hey, I'm never going to leave. Like, you've fixed the problems that I've had with the team. LDU definitely in the last 4 weeks or so has had that. Like, he's never had anyone to give him the ball. He's really missed out on that ball delivery and things like that. With Wardlaw and a few other players coming through. So is there a world where he leaves? Probably not. You know, I'm not going to bag St Kilda here, but I think the quality of our young kids and the talent we've got at the moment with all these early draft picks through trading and whatnot, you're going to be careful if, like, you guys don't become stagnated in the next couple of years and a North Melbourne almost push further than you guys. just with the quality and stuff that we've got and the makeup we've got. So I look as an outside supporter. Well, next year, if North Melbourne's in a similar position to where St Kilda is, at least at the moment on the ladder, why would he go to a St Kilda?
Yeah.
Why would he not just stay in the team that he's got?
Yeah.
Especially with the talent coming through. So, yeah, just kind of adds in. Is that pretty fair?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think I was speaking to Jake from Saints TV, and he's obviously fully invested in St Kilda and all that. And it's a difficult one because, you look at how desperate we want LDU, but as you rightly said, I believe we've got a top incomparable to North Melbourne with regards to our young core group. You just have to look at our win against Sydney to see Nazar, Mira, Philippou, whatever, right? But the problem is you got to keep them happy. They're obviously going to go elsewhere eventually if they don't see that ultimate success coming. And the classic example of that is Josh Battle. Yep. We're in the fight to keep him in. And the bottom line is, if we don't perform, there is that kind of, obviously there's outside factors regards to family and whatever. And I know it's his childhood club and whatnot, but if he doesn't see himself that he's a future where he's ultimately not going to win anything and he, as you said, stagnate, he's every got right to leave. And I can't see LDU coming through to our St Kilda. And I think that's the most frustrating thing as a club like St Kilda. We've been in that position now for a couple of seasons where your Bulldogs, your Melbournes were in that similar boat to us. And all of a sudden, Melbourne's won a premiership, the Dogs won the premiership in 2016. And you look at St Kilda and it's like, well, where have we gone wrong with regards to we were in the same position as those two clubs not so long ago? Why have they all of a sudden reached that ultimate success? And are the players that are currently in the side happy anymore? And I guess, it's really important to find double-edged sword to keep your players happy and also create that winning culture. But at the end of the day, you need to see development in your club for your players to go, I want to stay here or not move. And that's kind of, I reckon, our biggest issue at the moment is if we made finals again in the season we've had for whatever reason, all of a sudden your LDUs, your Brayshaws, your McCluggages are going to go, hang on, we have a chance to bring a premiership here, especially when they're coming from a club who has had tried so many times like your Brisbane's where they haven't had that ultimate success and they need that fresh start elsewhere. But as you said, like someone like LDU, who doesn't matter if he goes to St Kilda or North, same thing's going to happen, right? He's probably going to achieve the same amount of success regardless. And I don't know what podcast I listened to. I remember Larky mentioned it on somewhere that he was committed to staying to North because he wants to achieve that success through the hardship he suffered. And hopefully that happens with a couple of St Kilda players, but I can easily see LDU staying and doing the hard yards. He's starting to reap the benefits of those young kids developing. And if he can continue doing that, I think he'd be a lot happier person winning a premiership or winning a final with the guys he's been with through the hard times. That's for sure.
Yeah. And one of the weird things with the AFL is that I look at American football, I look at soccer and things like that. There's that feeling of it's okay to go to another club.
Oh, yeah.
Versus, I think with the AFL, it's very much like, cool, I want to do this with the club that drafted me. They took the chance on me and things like that. Especially someone like a Comben who could have been delisted at some point due to just so many injuries that the club's kind of gone through and done that for me. That's what it is. And I think LDU is probably the same situation. But looking at a type of player or a player that maybe North Melbourne needs to go for, I think heading into this year, you could have said key tools on any position. But crazily enough, I think we've actually, if you kept up with our drafting for this year, we actually brought in four tools in the trade period and through the draft already, bolstered by a Teakle as well. And I think our tools are probably at a position where we can hold out and wait for a little while. The one thing I think that a lot of clubs are looking for, and St Kilda have quite a few of these good players, is small forwards. I think is like a true small forward, one of those like types that just those crumbing forwards that everyone wants. When someone comes up on the trade table, everyone wants. And for the last couple of years, have just been, you have to underpay to get one of them into your team. I'm talking you Toby Bedfords, Charlie Cameron types, all these ones that just have the pace and can tackle and can kick the goals. So, yeah, I think that's probably what we're looking for. Because we haven't been able to land good free agents, like ever. outside of like a Logan, maybe a Tucker, which has been the thing that clubs have always said and fans have always kind of laughed at North Melbourne for. We've always had to develop our own talent. So I think we'll probably spend a first or second round pick this year getting the best small forward we can and trying to develop them that way. Because at the moment, you look like, let's pretend Cameron's up for free agency. Why would he come to us where he's got to stay with us for a couple of years and watch us develop versus another club or the club that he's at? So we're not in a position to get these type of players, so it's probably draft. Unless you're lucky and get a Bedford for like a third round pick and turns out to be a superstar. So you can't.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, especially with small forwards. If we link it back to wanting to stay and stuff, a lot of small forwards, they're in a unique position where there's not many positions up for grabs, so they're wanting to be that star player. And we look at Higgins, for example, we got, I would say, a little bit lucky as well because it was his childhood club and things like that. But you can see how he's flourished in a position where he's kind of the main small forward, like Butler's there as well, but he's the main guy that can kick 5 goals in a given day, and he's the centre of the attention. I think that's what the small forward needs, and if you can grab that for a good price, we look at Brisbane and Adelaide when Cameron played back there, just how good, and Collingwood won a premiership off small forward, essentially, how good their pressure can actually be and how undervalued they actually can be. But
the Pies getting Bobby Hill for like a second rounder. Like, come on, man. What's that nonsense?
Yeah, if you can get lucky, you can get real lucky. But before we wrap it up today, I guess, or tonight, if we link it back to Supercoach again, what's one North player that isn't on everyone's lips, like you to use your Sherries and whatnot, that should be on everyone's radar? And I have a feeling I know who you're going to say, but who's one player that you think should be on everyone's watch list for next season that could be almost like a starter or a bolter for top 8 to 12?
For next season. Now, it's interesting because I think this year, so North Melbourne have always had this mantra of, hey, we've got to play the kids. So in Supercoach, every year there's 1 or 2 kids that you kind of end up with your team, right? Either rookie-wise and whatnot. Make you a bit of cash and then you start to offload. I think next year might be one of the starting of a Supercoach dynasty, I'm going to start saying, for our teams for the next few years, where we're not picking up rookies anymore. We're actually starting to pick up established players. Start thinking about your cherries in the ruck coming into an all-Australian season. Start thinking about your Harry Sheasels in the forward line now that he's playing a mid-forward role, right? Like, how are you not going to pick this player? One definitely is McKercher in the back line, depending on what his role is coming next year. I've said it before. I think George Wardlaw is starting to have a Tom Green season maybe from last year and just getting the consistency right. So either next year or the year after, we're going to start considering him as a midfield primo that you might end up starting to have as well. So, yeah, just a couple of players there. I mean, you're not going to pick up a Comben, but everyone else, I think, you're going to be looking at to, like, seriously considering them. Comparing
Wardlaw, I think, is a big one that I think should be on everyone's radar. If you watch him live, I've seen him a couple of times just because I've got a mate of mine who is a North fan. But, yeah, Wardlaw is one that is just super contested. And if he gets his body right and ensures he has a solid preseason and whatnot, he can be really strong for you guys moving into 2025. But before we pack it up for tonight, what's one kind of, and I know that a lot of people say the same kind of tip to new super coaches or returning super coaches who may not have had the season they wanted to, but what's kind of one key tip that you can give away to both new and old that you can really think can put them in a good stead for next year? Because I know there's a lot of things and tips and tricks and whatnot that get sent out throughout the season, but what's one kind of linchpin kind of key point that you think can really put super coaches in a good position for 2025?
I'm going to say 2 things. Sorry to kind of hijack that a little bit. First thing is take your time and make a really good starting team. The team that you make in the preseason before the preseason games generally is then going to end up being stronger than the one that you make after the preseason games because of the bias and whatnot. Obviously, rookies come in and out of your team. That's kind of how it works, but we get blindsided a lot. So try and make a really good preseason team. Make one that you don't have to spend a lot of trades early. Because I know for myself and probably yourself and half a dozen other super coach people, we're burning through 15 trades in the first 6 or 7 weeks. And it doesn't set you up for success, right? The second thing I think is stick with your gut as well. This community is fantastic. It's amazing. There's so many content creators out there, but I hate the feeling where you've been hot on a player for weeks. You finally have enough to bring them in, and your opinion is now swayed by someone who's written an article or made a video or something. It's happened to me before, and it will happen to the people that watch this down the track. So try and stick to your gut a little bit and make sure that you pick players that you're happy to see, or get rid of players in your team that you're not happy to see. I was very not happy to see Tom, like how Touk Miller's been performing the last few weeks. I got rid of him, and it ended up being the right decision. Same with the Matt Rao, things like that, right? So, yeah, it's a fun game. Have fun.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the key message that a lot of content creators say is, at the end of the day, you know, it is just a game, and once lockout starts, you know, there's not much you can do. And when the ball's bounced, it's bounced. It's enjoy it for what it is, rather than getting frustrated when so-and-so gets injured in the opening minutes. It's not their fault. And, you know, it is what it is at the end of the day. You've had a go. And I think you've really nailed it on the head as well. And we've preached it as well from the start of when we started doing our podcast and whatnot, is that you pick your players because you like them or you enjoy watching them or you've done enough research to back your gut. And normally 9 times out of 10, your gut's right. And it's unfortunate when you get swayed by stuff on social media and content creators like us putting out content, but it's also, you got to remember it's our opinion and we can get it wrong as well. It's not like we're winning it every single season and a lot of people win it and that's it one time, that's it. But it's really important to realize that that's super important to go with your gut, because more often than not, the eye test is the most important thing. But one thing we like to do before we wrap up the episode is, who would you like to see in a future ep? Obviously, it doesn't have to be Supercoach related, or another person you've created with. I know your co-mate in Joe is an Essence Put. I know we did one with Spills earlier or last week. But who's one that you've collaborated with that would be nice to hop on for a future ep?
I think someone, if you can get him, Jesse from True Footy would be a really good one for you. Just kind of the way that West Coast is going at the moment, there's obviously a lot of talk about the team, new coach, kind of direction and whatnot. I think it'd be a good fit for you.
Yeah, I know he's done really good things over there, and hopefully he might be someone we can get in touch with. But really appreciate your time on here, Big J. I know you've done really good things with the Centre Bounce. I've seen how hard you've worked to get your channel to where it is, and it's, you know, flying at the moment. And you've obviously teamed up with Joe to create a pretty good product and very consistent uploads and all that. And you've got a pretty strong community. But as you said, also, Supercoach is in a good position where there's a lot of content creators, but it's very supportive. Other than some other communities that I've been aware of or things like that, where it's very individualistic and self-centered. But yeah, for sure, Supercoach is one that's really at its core, it's really community driven. But really appreciate your time, and we'll catch up for a future ep. And then for our guys, obviously for Supercoach Mates, we've got a fair few podcasts lined up, and hopefully you'll see this in the next coming days. But other than that, hopefully you enjoy your round 18 team, and hopefully it doesn't all turn to shit by Sunday. Other than that, enjoy.